So last week I have been speaking about taking the long-term view and how that can be a really protective and empowering practice. Something, that really helps us to relax a little bit. And understand, for example, that President Trump and his associates are actors in a much larger play and not its authors. Because, sometimes we can get really wrapped up in the fear, that those people are the authors of our lives, but they are not. They are actors, and actors come and go. And 2 days ago was the full moon of May, which is, considered to be most likely the birthday, the day of enlightenment, and the death day of the Buddha, who left us with this powerful teaching. And in the night of his awakening under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, the Buddha has, realized what's called the 3 higher knowledges, which made him to be the Buddha. And in a Pali language, they're called the Te Vicha. And actually 2 of those higher knowledges are simply around long-term view and deep time. And I'd just like to go a little bit into that today. So the first one is recollection of past lives. And the Buddha has been reflecting on the countless lives he has lived before the life he realized full awakening. And also over long time stretches, like eons of time, contractions and expansions of worlds. So he had that insight. And then the second one, it's called the divine eye, where the Buddha was, seeing the passing away and the arising again of beings according to their actions with intention. So he saw, the cycles of death and rebirth. So both of those higher knowledges are connected with deep time and seeing one's own existence in a much larger time frame. And that kind of way of looking, led him into understanding the underlying fuel which drives these cycles, which perpetuates these cycles. And he saw, that was actually ignorance in the form of greed, hatred, and delusion, how it manifests in our lives. And then, seeing that really deeply, a letting go occurred, because he understood, what's called in the Buddha's teaching the 3 characteristics, that all of those things, all of those patterns, all of those emergences, they are impermanent. And because of that, they are deeply unreliable, and they are empty of a self, or deeply conditioned, interconnected, interdependent. And that was his first teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which he taught to his former friends, in the deer park in Saranath, near Varanasi in India. That was the first, sutta which has been recorded in the canon. And, what has been recorded in the canon is conditioned by the people who have written it down. First it was committed to memory for about 500 years, and then later it started to get written down, and it was shaped, by the agendas and the perspectives of the people who have written it down, of course. So it has been written down in a certain flavor. And there was another actually event in the night of the awakening under the Bodhi tree, which hasn't made it into the central Pali canon. And we can find this event being passed down as a story in the Jataka tales. And those Jataka tales, they are more like a fringe text in the canon. And, scholars haven't really taken much interest, and it's considered more or less folklore. And the story goes like this, while the Buddha was involved in realizing those 3 higher knowledges, he got attacked, by the armies of Mara, and Mara is in the Pali Canon the personification of ignorance. And, as he gets attacked by the armies of Mara, he calls out to Mara and says, "I see you, Mara. I see you. I'm not gonna get identified with what you are telling me, but I'm aware of it." And in that way, the arrows which Mara was sending, the sharp arrows and weapons which Mara was sending towards the Buddha, turned into flowers, turned into blessings, turned into fuel of his awakening. And that's exactly what we are still trying to do today. Rather than identifying with our thoughts, we are trying to notice them, being aware of them, allowing them to begin and to end. So it's still the same practice, nothing has changed about it, even the depictions, have changed, of course. And, while the Buddha was saying that, "I see you, Mara," Mara was still not ready to give up and whispered in his ear and said, "Who do you think you are? That you deserve awakening. Who do you think you are?" And that cuts really right to the heart of the spiritual practice, that question, who do you think you are? And Gautama's response, before his enlightenment, the Buddha was called Siddhartha Gautama. His response was silent. And he was reaching down to the earth and he touched the earth. And for a moment, I'd like to share with you an image about that. You might have seen it, but maybe not really noticed it. This is the Buddha here at the Earth Room. And you can see the right hand of the Buddha touching the earth here. So in response to the question, who do you think you are? The Buddha simply touched the earth. And the earth responded by trembling. And, recognizing him. And there's also other stories where the earth goddess, came and wrung out her hair. Her hair was wet and she had very long hair. And she wrings it out and the water which comes out washes away all the armies of Mara. And you can see that in murals, in different temples, but also in water features in front of temples. I've seen it quite frequently in Thailand. And she's called Brahme Torni in Pali. In Thai. Brahme Torni. So the teaching here, is the Buddha wasn't like a lonely, hyper-masculine, solo, self-reliant hero. But the Buddha was also deeply recognizing his own interdependence and his deep connection, with the women in his life. His mother who died a few days after his birth, his foster mother, his own aunt, Mahapajapati, who brought him up and became one of the first bhikkhunis and the first bhikkhuni leader, his own wife, Yashodhara, who also became an enlightened bhikkhuni and gave birth to his son, and the earth herself, who gave birth to his body and nourished and sustained him for as long as he lived, 84, 85 years. So this deep recognition of our interdependence, our interbeing, and the need for relationship and sustenance in order to walk the path, has always been here, but because of the way how the Buddha's teaching have been passed down, mainly by monks, mainly by men, it has been seen in a certain way, and certain things were left out or put to the margin. And now, as we are ourselves in the midst of a great transition, and the earth is trembling because she needs to be recognized by us, we are starting to see things differently. And, these Wednesday sessions are here for us to consciously receive the trembling and open ourselves to that shake up, so that we might be rewired in a way which is more in sync with what's needed to be understood right now by human beings in order to be a good ancestor and prepare the ground for the transition which needs to happen. So this beautiful gesture of touching the earth reminds us that awakening is much less about stretching up towards transcendence than reaching down to the soil and honoring our earthly home. Because we are realizing that we humans, we are earthlings in the true sense of the word. The word human, has the same root as the word humus. And humility. To start allowing that realization to really deeply sink in and change us, and the discomfort which comes from that, and the fear, being out of control. But we are anyway out of control, and modernity was just a story which, gave us for a few centuries the delusion or illusion, that we could, through increasing scientific and technology, control what's happening. And now we are waking up, no, that's not really how it works. But attunement and care and respect, that's what works. And now, as we are undergoing this rewiring, a lot of unresolved issues are thrown up. I experience it myself. It's not necessarily, an easy process, but we have what it takes, because like the Buddha, we can touch the earth. We can reach down and we can remember, when we are attacked by the hordes of Mara, what is real true sadness and true regret and true awe and true wonder and true uncertainty, and what is just a repetitive pattern of disparaging ourselves for not being good enough. And, to be on that edge, to be able to hold the space, but to discern, what is true and what is just a repetitive pattern of putting ourselves down. And that's, a very crucial part of the practice, to be able to discern that and not fall for it. To just stay upright, to open ourselves to be with the vulnerability of all of it, and to touch the earth by literally touching it with our hand, if we like, the ground, but also touching the earth by noticing that our bodies and the body of the earth are of one process. And remembering that when we are caught up in thinking, remembering it by sensing and feeling into the body. And leaning into what really matters. You know, the word what really matters is like an amazing way of saying it. Matter. What really matters. So in that vein, you know, I'd like to guide us in a meditation again. By maybe, you know, closing our eyes, if that's helpful, and connecting with the body from inside. You know, this very precious human birth, without which we wouldn't be able to practice, be able to be here for this. The human birth was always considered to be precious in the Buddha's teaching. A very rare opportunity. But there wasn't anything said about, you know, the precarious situation we are in right now with these bodies on this planet, you know, which is trembling because of the way humans have been conducting life on this planet. This is new. And it needs to be worked into the way how we approach the teaching. And that's what we are trying to do here. So allowing the breath to take you deeper into the body. And sensing, feeling the weight, the pressure where the body meets the seat. As we are gently pulled by gravity towards the center of the earth. This, you know, planet which is speeding through space around the sun and at the same time turning around itself, its own axis. You know, it has been undergoing so many changes and arisings and ceasings since over 4 billion years. And in that process has given birth to those human beings we are belonging to at this point. And all of the powerful energies which were set free during this process. And looked at them, you know, from a human point of view, they seem to be destructive. and of tremendous strength, and can make us feel completely overpowered and out of control. Because it's not all about us. And that's the learning curve we are involved in now. It's not all about us. And that was just a juvenile understanding, appropriate, for a young person to think it's all about us, until we are ready to grow out of that. So just allowing that to, drop into the system and give a sense of relaxation. And with that, maybe we can sit a little bit more fully here. Checking throughout the body, your shoulders, your jaw. Just bringing to awareness, is there any tension? Or can we just really let go into the ground on which we are sitting right now? And letting go of any tension or stress, letting it sink into the ground. And breathing up the silence and the stability, the stillness of the body of the earth. As our reference point. Just like as the Buddha has been touching the earth in the night of his awakening. When he was asked by Mara who he thinks he is, that was his reply. And I remember when my first teacher, Ajahn Buddhadasa, when he died, he left a poem, and the poem was saying something like that, I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't gone anywhere. Because where could he have gone? He couldn't have gone anywhere else. His body dissolved back into the earth. His mind, his heart was free. and all greed, hatred, and delusion had disbanded, the fire had gone out, the fire of craving. But in order to, be in a mental frame of being able to realize the end of craving, one needs to fully live in a way which is washing away the craving as a practice. And that takes time. That is a training. But if we have this long-term view, we can stay steady. Sometimes we need a break, but then we keep on going. And sometimes we get triggered, and then we take some time to take care of that, and then we keep on going. And then, consciously sending down some, roots into the ground, into the soil below us, without any pressure. And really connecting with the vastness of the body of this earth and the aliveness. The soil, healthy soil, is a living being. With many, many different beings living inside of it. Networks of roots and mycelium, communication networks between other beings, trees and other forms of life. And if you ever walked on soil, where nobody has walked before. Last year I've been in a forest in the high Sierras where there is no pathways and nothing there. When you walk on that forest floor, it's quite soft, quite springy. It's not packed at all. The soils, we are used to, or the concrete in the cities, very packed, and nothing can live inside there. Healthy soil is a living being consisting of many other living beings which have died and gotten integrated and becoming the foundation for other forms of life. And in that way, the layers of soil around the globe have accumulated over deep time. And everything, which we eat comes from the soil through, photosynthesis in collaboration with the sun, the photons which are raining down from the sun onto the planet, getting transmuted into energy we can eat, plant energy, through photosynthesis. So allowing the body to relax and open up, and in that way the mind can settle. And we can sense into this aliveness, the vibration of the energy body, like a hum, and spreading out the awareness throughout the body, a little bit beyond the body, and sitting in that aliveness as it presents itself right now. The same aliveness as permeates the whole planet, the whole cosmos, presenting itself in our bodies and being kept going through eating, drinking, and breathing. And we can also listen into this aliveness quote unquote, with the whole body. Listening into that spaciousness around the body, silence. And in that way, realizing we are not separate. We belong to this vast process. And this vast process goes through different transitions. Has been doing that since a very, very long time and is continued to do that. And right now, we are in such a more pronounced bottleneck as a species. And there is no shortcut. The learning is experiential. That's the only way. And all of the book knowledge and the theories, they are there to support that. But they can't do it. The feeling and the sensing and the experiencing is where the transformation really hits the ground. And there's no shortcut. The only way how we can, have an influence, we can turn towards more frequently, with more surrender and reverence for the process, a devotion, a willingness to be with what is. We can do that. And leaning into the support systems we have got, the teaching, the Sangha, the weekly meetings, taking a rest when we need it, looking after our bodies. There's a lot we can do. But all of that, supports the sensing and the feeling, because that's where the rubber hits the road, so to say. That's what's difficult for us. Because of these bodies, they are very sensitive. They are very vulnerable. Because they are not separate. Even they look like to be for a moment or two. So making oneself available for this rewiring, which comes through the body, through that aliveness, which is energy. Which presents different at different times. It's a mystery. if we're looking, at how the evolutionary process has unfolded, it's that energy manifesting in myriad ways, in deep time. And surrendering to that as good as we can, and meeting all of the challenges which get activated in that meeting. A clearing away of restriction, of old patterns, of trying to control. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just being met and being transformed into wisdom and compassion. Compassion for ourselves, as we are struggling in the process. Compassion for others. As they are struggling. And compassion for the earth herself. She's always there. And we can touch the earth if we remember it. It's our true home as long as we are having a human body, or any other body for that matter. It seems like all other animals are much more aware than we are. And I think that's why we have this name earthworm practice, because it reminds us of the humility we need in order to get through this learning curve. To really come down low to the ground from all of those ambitious dreams we've had about where we will go next. That's a part of the modernity's paradigm about conquering, about going ahead into the future, to unknown lands, and see what we can get from there. And that is dying now because there's no place to go. Even, there's all kinds of almost mental crazy theories out there, what people want to escape to. But if we really investigate, we know that the only place to go is here and touching the earth. And that's the challenge. And it's not particularly glorious right now. Looks like a lot of work. Looks like very messy. I want to share with you again the poem by Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer, which is called Lumbricus terrestris. On a day when the world is weighty, dark and dense with need, I want to be the earthworm that gives itself over to tunneling, its every movement as an act of bringing spaciousness. And when minutes feel crushed by urgency, I want to meet the world worm-like, which is to say, grounded, consistent, even slow. No matter how desperate the situation, the worm does not tunnel faster, nor burrow more. It knows it can take decades to build fine soil. To whatever is compacted, the worm offers its good worm work, quietly bringing porosity to what is trodden, compressed. So often, in my rush to repair, I end up exhausted. Let my gift to the world be my constancy, a devotion to openness, my willingness to be with what is. Let my gift to myself be patience, as I tend what is dense and dark. Let my gift to the world be my constancy, a devotion to openness, my willingness to be with what is. Let my gift to myself be patience, as I tend what is dense and dark. So now we can sit a few more minutes, 5 more minutes, and then I'm gonna ring the bell.